Hey everybody, welcome to week 273. I had to go back and check to make sure because it's starting to blur. Oh man, hopefully you're still with us after last week. I mean, that was kind of a head spinner, wasn't it? With Jack, the other Jack, Jack Barsky. Yeah. And I don't know why, but I've never heard that joke about don't say hi to me on an airplane.
Oh my gosh. I have friends that's what they say all the time. Like, and when we're in an airport together, it's like, you can't say it. And I'm like, yes, I know. So yes. And by the way, so I went down to Charleston for a few days and the entire, 6 plus 7 hour trip because of construction, listened to it. And I got to the point in the book on the audio book where he actually became Jack Bartsky. And so all of his real name and his prior aliases and all.
Yes.
So he's finally getting into America, and it's just I'm just sucked into it. It's
Oh, it's
like a spy
so
novel, but it's
incredible.
real.
Yeah, I mean, and the guy is funny. I mean, he is very quick-witted, as you can tell. So anyway, yeah, hopefully if you missed last week, go back to the YouTube channel and listen to Jack Barsky or listen to his 2 episodes on the Anything But Typical podcast because it's definitely worth a listen. And if you get sucked in, definitely get his audiobook or read the book. And I've done both, and they're both really good. So, anywho, um, we are going to be talking about how social media and those quick tips from AI and ChatGPT for free legal advice. Sometimes it's even worse than what what you paid for because it could cost you a lot of money. So we'll dive into that. But Adam, I know that you've got some stuff that we need to talk about as well. Like, hey, is the government going to shut down? Who knows? What do we do? Other things that are being affected out there for business owners. So Adam, why don't you go ahead and take it?
Actually, I was going to punt to Jack and say, hey, tell us about the H-1B because that could also be a shutdown
All right, here
for
we
some
go.
Oh,
I'll
people.
go
that's
first.
true.
No worries. All
All
right,
right, go
so
for it.
Um, there are actually two things. I think people are focused on the H-1B visa, which is the purchase price to be in the program is potentially going to go up to $100,000 as an application fee. That doesn't mean that that is the level of investment or anything else related monetarily to what is required in order to pursue that type of visa. That's just to submit your piece of paper to the federal government that, okay, I want to apply. And the reason why that's important is because a lot of companies, and you'll see if you're following it, a lot of the owners and operators of like tech companies and other companies in the US who rely upon getting that talent from other places in the world that have basically created this pipeline of skill sets. Now it's going to cost them more money. And so does that cut that off and leave that pipeline to those who can afford, the entrance fee, which has now been increased. And so the arguments for it are the positions are the fee aims to curb program abuse, but critics argue may stifle talent recruitment. There's also an adjustment to, or the EB-5 program, which some of you may be familiar with, is you can get U.S. residency through a 1 million investment with options for corporate sponsors at 2 million. And the argument for that is the EB-5 visa comes with relaxed job creation and tax terms, and it's an investment boost. And of course, the skeptics worry about wealth-based biases, and of course, legal challenges that whether or not the White House and the Article 2 executive branch can be doing these things without the approval of the Article 1 Congress or legislature. So then, as per usual, toss it to the Article 3 judiciary to figure this all out. So that's what's on the horizon for those. I will tell you that we here at Shoemaker have seen increased awareness and I wouldn't say panic, but I think attention to applications and try to get them in because my understanding is that these things apply prospectively, not retroactively. And so it would be at the time that those, if this passes and now the price is $100,000, then it would be applicable to those that get into the system after that point in time, and they're not going to go back and surcharge people who paid the lower price. So that's why there is this surge of applications and clients that are reaching out to us and saying, okay, can we go ahead and get these 5-10 people in before this happens, where there was a natural cadence of getting people in over a period of time. So everything's been rushed for a lot of our clients that are into bringing people from abroad into the US.
Jack, could you hit on something too that I've been confused by, I've heard a lot of pundits about, and they absolutely did not cover in Schoolhouse Rock. So, and you mentioned, executive order, who has the rights to do this? Let's throw it to the third branch of government, the judiciary. It seems like, well, I understand the philosophy of what's happening. The executive branch says, hey, we think this is legal, let's test it. So they do it. And then somebody that's impacted sues. And then a lower court says no, and says, you can't do it until I figure this out. And then the executive branch appeals to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, on the air quote shadow docket, or whatever, says, well, actually, go ahead and do it until it makes its way through. In other words, they're basically doing the same thing, only going the opposite direction. Until it's illegal, you can do it. Whereas the lower court seems to be saying, until I figure out if it's legal, you can't do it. Can you, I promise, hey, Shoemaker Compliance Police, this is Jack's opinion, not Shoemaker's opinion. Can you just kind of weigh in on why would you go one route versus the other in terms of legal theory for those of us who only know the law based on Schoolhouse Rock?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that caveat asterisk. And so by anyone continuing to listen to this program, you have now been informed and consent to the fact that this is not legal advice. This is the theory of Jack, or dad theory, as my kids continue to reference my thoughts and processes when I share them with them. So the best answer always, right? It depends. And it depends on what type of law it was. Is it a law that was passed by Congress, meaning, or a regulation that was passed under a statute that was passed by Congress? So what is the source of the regulation or the statute? It wouldn't be a statute unless it obviously went through Congress. So we're really a lot of times dealing with regulatory power that has been granted to the executive branch and their implementation of it. So then you get into, okay, is it executive power reserved to the president, the commander in chief, to be able to change the Department of Defense to Department of War? Is it being able to impose tariffs, which is it has clearly in the Constitution, taxing power is associated with and within powers solely of Congress. So is it a tax or not? And so you get to the fundamental things that, okay, need to work their way through the courts and have an impact on all of us. Arguably, everything has an impact on all of us if it impacts our checkbooks or our personal freedoms or anything else, right? And so there are a lot of factors that go into whether or not, because we've seen it and we've discussed it here, that in some instances, when you're right, it depends on what direction it's going in. Is it something that has been implemented and then it gets to the Supreme Court and they say, okay, well, until it works its way through and has been sufficiently adjudicated and gets back up to us in its natural course, then we're hands off and you just have to do what was been implemented. And in other cases, it is, wait a minute, not so fast. This is clearly a violation of your powers or exceeds your powers because you have taken, and they go through the analysis and say, okay, this is the impact of it. and you are not authorized to create that impact. So we're going to stop you from doing that. We're going to put in an injunction, and then you can argue why it's proper. So it is, again, on a case-by-case basis. Then you get into the more complexity as to, well, wait a minute. So as you said, one person or one group files a lawsuit that says this is illegal. And then the court, whether it's a lower federal court, a circuit of a court of appeals, circuit court of appeals on the federal level, whether it is the Supreme Court, whether it is the Supreme Court of any state that's interpreting the law, says, this applies only, the outcome of this applies only to those people who took the initiative to move forward and challenge this. And so we'll get into that when we talk about use of AI and social media to be your legal guide. In that, one of the issues is that what you get back in output is not jurisdictionally accurate in many cases. It is kind of like what the AI went out there and found, and I suspect took the majority position and said this is what the answer is. And so there's a bias towards that. And so that's a long-winded way of saying it depends on who, when, where, and where it came from. So I didn't answer your question because I can't without going into a very probably 2-day seminar about the legislative, executive, and judicial process with respect to different types of laws, regulations, and initiatives and executive orders and those kind of things. So
I appreciate that. I saw Joseph had a question. No, I'm not Jack away on it, but I heard an interesting thing the other day that's just related to the topic of like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna stop it. No, we're gonna let you do it until we get it all sorted out. In scenarios like this where they're actually not ruling on the merits, it actually doesn't matter who it is. I can't remember the justices, but Ketanji Brown was one of them, and Sotomayor I think was the other on one side, and then it was like Alito and Thomas on the other. Whatever it was, when there was no actual argument or time to decide the case, it was something like 95% of the time they went the partisan route. But this is what actually gives me hope. When there actually is the proper time to debate the merits of the case and there's oral arguments and all that kind of stuff, like you think, and there was like live, discussions amongst the justices, most of the time it's a bipartisan decision. Like one person will swing the other direction, two people will swing the other direction. Like you still have split decisions, but they're not strictly among party lines. Somebody will break with the pack, and that just gives me faith that the process actually works when we follow the process as it's supposed to be designed. Versus what again, I get the wonky side of like, I'm not actually deciding the merits. I'm just saying you can do it until I do decide the merits.
Yes.
But all of a sudden it's like, well, that means I could do it and it's legal. Like, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
It
Yeah,
depends.
and think about the consequences now. And we talked about last week about all this money that's being collected for tariffs. Is it getting put into a special bank account with a higher interest rate in case they have to give it back to everybody? No.
Unlikely.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine, yeah, probably not. And then to kind of expand upon Joseph's question, the rules of engagement with the courts with respect to issuing opinions is that a dissenting opinion basically can be giving everyone the middle finger in nice words, right? And it could be as simple as that. The purpose is of a dissenting opinion in an elaborate and lengthy and well thought out dissenting opinion is to establish a couple things. One is that, okay, there's some of us on this court who think that the majority opinion is crap, and here's the reasons why. We also think that there may be an opportunity down the road to correct this. And so here's the pathway to correct it and the reasons for it. And what you will see over the course of time, and just kind of evolution of everything, of us as human beings, of our judicial system, of our legal system, of our society, that you will see, okay, a dissenting opinion that was published 15 years ago, it is now the cases that matter, that case law that has been relied upon for the past 15 years or so is overturned. And it's overturned based on a lot of the arguments that were made in that dissenting opinion. A lot of times, when I used to, and don't do anymore, but our younger people, our associates, are putting together a legal analysis, they will refer to or cite to a dissenting opinion to say, okay, well, even though this is the majority opinion in the state of North Carolina, there was a dissent, Supreme Court of North Carolina, there was a dissenting opinion by one of the state Supreme Court justices, which aligns with kind of a majority opinion in the South Carolina appeals court. So, in South Carolina, let's combine this dissenting opinion in North Carolina and South Carolina, and then that kind of bolsters our position in South Carolina. So there's various uses for that, but there is no requirement that says you must dissent and use, 5 full paragraphs with 4 sentences each or anything like that.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, well, switching gears off that, thank you for that, Jack. The other thing in the news too is, hey, are we going to have an impending government shutdown or not over passing an extension to the spending bill? And it seems like the fight's I just wanted to clarify what the fight's boiling down to. It seems like the fight's boiling down to is part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. There were some pretty substantial changes to healthcare. One of which was to Medicare, Medicaid. The other was to the amount that the government funds associated with the Affordable Care Act. And it seems like they're getting laser focused on the latter, which is, hey, what should the government fund associated with the Affordable Care Act? The way it used to be is that, if you didn't make a whole lot of money, you got a credit if you had to buy health insurance through the premium because you were with a small company, your employer didn't offer it, or whatever the case may be. The problem with that for a lot of people was that credit phased out pretty quickly. It was 400,000. It was 400% of the or 4 times the poverty level. But what that meant is, like, if I'm married, have a family, making $75,000 a year, that meant I got no premium credit, but at the same time, my health insurance on the exchange, including what I would have to pay in a deductible, was going to run me around $2,000 a year, or $2,000 a month. So $24,000 a year. So, I'm paying 25% of my income pre-tax for health insurance, which, just meant that a lot of people, like, I can't afford that. I can't even afford the Affordable Care, Jack. So which I totally get, that is a lot of money to pay. And just for back, under Reagan, earlier than that, Nixon, Kennedy, that 25% number was more like 5%. So that's like, we talk about the healthcare crisis in the US, it's the cost side of the equation, like, it's out of control. So what the Biden administration did under the stimulus package they did under the pandemic is they just, slipped this in too, which is, hey, instead of there being a 400% cliff, we're basically just going to say, nobody's going to have to pay more than, 8.5% or whatever it was of their income if they're buying off the exchange. And for employers like BGW or Shoemaker, a plan isn't deemed affordable if it's over 9%, of what your employees are having to pay. So that the exchange portion of that goes away. So if I was same dude making 75 grand a year, now I'm super excited because now I'm only paying, a couple $100 a month for my health premiums. Now I'm going to have to pay double or even triple that. If this goes away as an item, which it will, during the renewal period, which is coming up here in November, which is why it's so urgent to say do something. And the Senate Majority Leader John Thune said, "Okay, get it. We need to do something." A lot of Republicans were on board with doing something about it too, including Josh Hawley. But they're just like, "Well, we'll do it later after we get this bill passed," instead of doing it with the bill passed. And who knows what the right answer is there. It's just that's the actual issue is associated with the affordability of healthcare coverage. And my 2 cents is that it's all just crap. I don't like the price we pay for healthcare insurance. I don't like the amount of debt that we have in the country, and I also don't like to know that my fellow brother is going to now have to pay triple or double for health insurance either. So it all just sucks. Get serious and solve the problem. Soapbox done.
Let me throw out some stats there too.
Yeah.
As provided by my friends at Shoemaker Advisors, which is our sister affiliate. They are basically lobbyists. I mean, they're very, from my perspective, I'm in awe of them. They walk into the Capitol building like they, well, they do belong there, but I mean, it's just that they know a lot of people. But so the statistics that they shared with us was, okay, significant impact. Republicans are proposing a clean 7-week continuing resolution for more negotiation time. Democrats want a 4-week extension with additional demands, including permanent health insurance subsidies and other things as you just discussed. Status is that the House passed this clean bill to keep the government open until November 21st. Let's see, the vote was 217 to 212 with one Democrat siding with Republicans. In the Senate, the vote failed 44 to 48. You need 60 for passage. Senate and House are both out on recess this week. Senate is scheduled to come back in session on September 29th, and the House return is to be determined. And this is as of earlier this week, so maybe that has been determined. What's next? Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries have sent a joint letter to President Trump requesting a meeting to discuss keeping the government open. I think I saw a flash this morning that the president, there was a meeting scheduled and the president canceled it, or the White House canceled it. I don't know if that's accurate or not. And then so there's all the politicking that's going on, even though they're out of session or they're not meeting, that is going on in the background to try to get this done. In one sense, it feels like, okay, crying wolf. It seems like, every periodically we discuss and is discussed, oh my gosh, the government's going to shut down. And it's just like, okay, again, the government's not going to shut down. If it does, it's going to be for a very short period of time for someone to make a point about something. But yes, it's not going to, again, Jack theory, dad theory. We have seen shutdowns for short periods of time, but usually it's the 11th hour crisis averted for the short period, for the short term, whether it's 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it may be. So anyway, some statistics for your consumption.
Which I appreciate. So switching gears into our ChatGPT legal opinion, I thought funny Adam's story was trying to do some to your point of, to the point of like, hey, is stuff reliable and where does it get the opinion of? It also gave me a lot of job security. I was looking about a job classification for exempt versus non-exempt from the Fair Labor, because I didn't want to pay overtime or hourly. So of course I'm looking for like my answer, which is exempt. And, of course, I didn't call the Shoemaker legal department. I consulted ChatGPT. And, that was the first time it probably hit me. This thing is set up to not get sued. And the reason it's set up to not get sued is because its authoritative source are a bunch of employment labor attorneys who don't want to get sued before they published the thought leadership on the internet. So it's not like, same thing applies for tax advice. Like nobody's throwing shady stuff out on the internet, or like how do I get in the gray zone, or how do I get more aggressive? Isn't like the article of the blog post. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Not only is the information potentially unreliable, it's definitely not geared up to kind of give me the answer that I might have been looking for. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to you, man. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, actually, so interestingly, I was asked to be interviewed for some legal points. Actually, it has some tax issues or some estate planning issues and that kind of thing. And even though we talk about that here, and the reason why internally someone asked me to do it is because they know that we're doing these weekly webinars and know that we have talked about it. Some of those things that they wanted to chat with me about. And I said, well, and I thought about it and I said, well, okay, we can control for the most part what we say here, the publication of it, video, and unless someone transcribes it, maybe even artificial intelligence, it's not going to be part of an AI search. So it's not going to become, even though we say all the time it's not legal advice, someone might take it as legal advice, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I declined to do it because, what I said, there are so many possible permutations of what is asked, what I say, how it is published, and then how it is retrieved and utilized. And so I'm like, I'm way out of control of what I actually said in that environment because AI can scrape it and use it what it was intended to be used for, but not what I intended it to be used for, which when I actually said those words to that reporter. So anyway, I'll start out with, and I want to start out with kind of like the legal use in the legal environment and then kind of applicability to generally in business owners. So I found an article from a week ago, and it was, is AI increasing your legal fees? And the answer is yes. And it starts out with AI tools tend to tell users what they want to hear. The models are designed to be helpful and they often provide confident sounding, but legally inaccurate or misleading responses tailored to the assumptions in the prompt. So basically, you're asking it a question, you're asking it in a way that is biased, unbeknownst to you, or not realizing it, and it's going to answer your question in a way that you were hoping it would be answered because you have asked it in a certain way. And so be mindful of that. So specifically, why is free legal advice dangerous, whether it's on social media or on online generally, Google or whatever it may be? So as we've talked about a few moments ago, the law is very specific. And it's specific to jurisdiction. So you have federal law, and you have state law, and you have the interaction between the two, and it was developed to be harmonious, but sometimes it isn't. And when you ask a question, can I legally do this or do that? It's going to give you an answer, and sometimes it will say, do you want to know the results in a specific state? Okay, helpful maybe, but within the state, there's different jurisdictions and there's different agencies and organizations. It could be that the North Carolina Department of Revenue put something out specifically for North Carolina residents that do not apply to residents of other states and would not apply and maybe contra to or in addition to any regulations that the IRS puts on all of us with respect to anything tax related or reporting related. You've heard the term hallucination, where AI makes stuff up. I would propose to you that we all hallucinate, in a sense that, okay, sometimes we recall things that aren't necessarily actually how they happened. You can ask my wife about, and my best friend's wife, who we've known for over 3 decades and went to high school with. And actually, his wife actually will be on the program I think in 2 weeks. And, the stories that were told originally 3 decades ago in their actual occurrence and how they occurred, somehow have been embellished over the past 3 decades. And so I would submit to you that my wife and his wife can tell the stories more accurately than both of us. So, it's made up stuff. And it is, I don't know why that happens, other than maybe it finds something that maybe is an opinion and not factually accurate, and then it interprets it and puts it in the mix of things. So, and the other thing is, as far as inaccuracy goes, understand that the law is evolving. We just talked about majority and dissenting opinions, and how that, in my example, over 15 years, flip-flopped. And so those things are changing, and sometimes AI will go and reach for something that is not accurate because it didn't find or didn't reach for the more accurate information that is closer in time to actual time, to current time, that would then make the prior position inaccurate or partially inaccurate, so that you can't rely upon it. Um, okay, so you use this stuff and it's wrong. Whose fault is it? Who are you going to blame? Who is going to be accountable for it? Wikipedia, the early, kind of early onset of aggregation of information outside of Google. And, they make it very clear that their information aggregation is based upon user input, user corrections, and the evolution of what information is out there. So, rely upon it at your own risk, even though Wikipedia sounds like encyclopedia. You got to know, okay, it's not an encyclopedia like old school. Was it World Book Encyclopedia that we all used?
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So
And Britannica, yeah.
right. I've noticed that there is a AI note taker uh, recording everything that we say and probably transcribing it, which is fine generally. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we put these recordings on our YouTube channels, so that's fine. But in the context of having a conversation with someone, a confidential conversation, um, including attorney-client privilege conversations, understand that, okay, what you say and what you post and everything else is going somewhere and is being processed and supposedly is secure. But most of you probably know that it is some people's goal in life to see how many impenetrable domains and cyberspace areas they can get into before they die. And so that is what we're all up against, and we utilize, but it's utilize the best that you can and the most trusted that you can, but understand that there is the aspect of loss of confidentiality and attorney-client privilege in some cases. So I make sure that if I see one of those on a conversation with a client, I'm like, I would prefer you not record this. Let me tell you why. And if they decide to do that, then I'm like, okay, well, the recording will record the fact that I told them that, and the fact that it blew the attorney-client privilege communication, and therefore they cannot withhold that in litigation in the discovery process. So then you have, and we've heard these stories about citations to things that don't exist. There is this case in the Western District of Texas that says this. Nope, doesn't exist. And then judges have found out through when they go and actually their clerks validate the legal opinions, and they're like, yeah, no. So I will tell you that professional service organizations have put rules around the use of AI and have developed, and we're also experimenting with, it's a legal services based AI that will be involved in our ecosystem or inside our ecosystem to be able to I supposedly I'll be able to say, draft a shareholders agreement that is minority ownership interest friendly, that has buy sell provisions, that blah, 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 blah. And it will go through and find examples of prior documents that have that, and then supposedly may be able to actually generate a new document. I'll that'd be nice to have. I am a little bit skeptical about that, but understand that it is inevitable. And I keep saying Skynet in my head and trying to not think about that happening. Real world examples: lawyer used Chat GPT to prepare a court brief. We've talked about that. All AI legal research tools have been found to hallucinate 17 to 33% of the time in empirical testing. So there have been, testing, validation of it, and did they cite what was accurate, or did they make stuff up? A chatbot in New York City was found giving business advice that would violate the law. For example, telling them they could legally fire someone for certain protected complaints. So I think in that instance, someone was complaining about harassment. Owner of the company checks its source in AI, and AI says, you can definitely fire this person. They did, and they ended up in the middle of a lawsuit for retaliatory termination. All right, so in the legal context, and guys, if you want to jump in on anything, I'm just going to keep going because I have a lot to cover. Okay.
Keep rolling.
All right. How to protect yourself in the legal environment. Use online legal content only as an educational starting point. I will tell you that I am now the recipient of, on numerous occasions, documents that have been drafted by AI, and it is, hey, can you take a look at this and see if you see any red flags? And my response is that I will charge you more money to review this versus you using our form that I know it will work well for you and that I can modify to personalize. But I'm happy to do whichever you wish. But I will tell you that the form that you receive back, which will be a red line of the form you gave to me, will look much different. There will be more red and blue on that document than there is black. And so choose your adventure. And I don't say that flippantly, or I'm not upset about it. I want them to understand that, okay, again, the first thing I said, is AI causing you to have higher legal fees? Verify the information with legal counsel. Be guarded about sharing confidential information with AI, and even ones that you believe are protected, that your information is protected. And I know that's hard to do. It's like, okay, well, isn't that information already out there because it's stored in our database at the company, and surely someone can hack into that whenever they want to. So why? It's kind of like, protecting your identity. It's okay. Well, I was doing some research on, I received some mail that was misdirected to us. And it was a prior owner. And I saw my name came up, because then I did a search for the address, and my name came up, and it showed addresses from high school. So my parents' address all the way through current, had essentially my social security number with a lot of X's, driver's license number with X's, prior phone numbers, relationships, had my age, and then misidentified me with someone else who's much older. But I mean, showed my relationship to my long deceased grandmother, and all who lived in Charlotte for a while. And so all these things pop up. So the information's out there anyway, right? Well, that's probably not the right attitude to take with respect to dumping information into AI. Okay, and review outputs. So I said, hey, what would be, and I started put together a checklist of things. And so, and then I put in AI to see what they would say. And so they added a few things. So source and credentials, know what the source is, make sure they're credentialed properly. So if it is a lawyer from New York, from a well-respected firm, because AI will tell you where the source is. And this is more of what Adam was saying with the CYA, is like, okay, well, they're, all it's doing is aggregating information, and it will tell you where it's from. And shame on you if you rely on something and you don't go back to check to see the source of it. The nature of the advice, is it specific to, is the output, the results that you get, specific to the issue at hand, or is it more general? And so therefore, relying on something that is more general, it says, well, across the United States, blah, 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 versus in the state of North Carolina, whatever it may be. So be aware of that. Again, check references. Obviously there are clear disclaimers, as I said, with the output. There's usually a little disclaimer down at the bottom of the output that, it'll give you the information. It'll ask you if you want additional information, a chart, a PDF, a Word document, a PowerPoint slide, and then below that it'll say, understand that you acknowledge that AI may not, the output may not be accurate, or something along those lines. So, all right. So then I was like, all right, let me kind of interpolate that into bad advice that has been given to business owners. And I asked for some examples. And so, as I mentioned this before, you can fire an employee for complaining, whether it's sexual harassment, unsafe conditions, etc. And actually that advice would, and the termination of that particular employee in that instance is an antitrust violation, violates both federal and state law in the jurisdiction. And so it basically empowers and emboldens the person who was fired for an illegal termination, and basically brought all kinds of claims and damages to this individual. For this individual in favor of the individual against the company. You can take a cut of your employees' tips and use tips however you wish. Well, no, there are certain restrictions on what can and can't be done with tips, particularly with a manager participating in the tip pool. And so this particular company got in trouble. And there were also state wage laws that impacted this. So not only do you have federal issues, but you have state issues that were brought upon this company because they relied upon AI. You don't need a written contract. A handshake is fine. I don't have to, I think, go into the lunacy of that statement, but apparently someone relied upon that. And yes, there is the concept that you can create a contract, a binding contract with your words. But there are a lot of things that have to go that are surround that, which is knowing what the fundamental terms and conditions are, agreeing upon that, and other things like implementation of that. But a verbal contract is, I would strongly suggest that you not do that ever. You don't need to register your business, get a business license to form an LLC. Obviously, again, lunacy. You can ignore data privacy, consumer protection rules. They don't apply. There have been companies that have gotten in trouble with this because their reach goes outside the boundaries of the United States. So it goes into the European Union that have their own, the UK has rules, the European Union has rules. And so if you are conducting commerce there are certain rules, and they will enforce those rules if there's been one of their citizens that has been economically damaged. So you have an output that says, oh, well, and it may even ask you, okay, where are you located? United States. And it may not ask you, and where do you conduct business? And you say United States, but you forgot about those orders last week or last month that came from the UK or South America or wherever it may be. So beware of those. Asking AI for a loophole to deal with your situation, maybe a tax loophole, and it provides that information, but is it applicable to you in your state? Is it applicable to your circumstances? Have you told AI sufficiently enough information about what's going on in order for it to give you the appropriate output? I love this one. You don't need a lawyer. AI is enough. There was a litigant in a case, I believe in maybe Minnesota, that the judge was very clear. You obviously are using AI. You're representing yourself. You're obviously using AI. And here are the consequences for doing that. And he basically, I think, said that AI told me I didn't need a lawyer, which, I mean, you're already getting in trouble for using AI. Why would you even make that statement? So I don't know. Okay. Why business owners fall for such advice? I mean, it's low cost. It's there. It's free unless you pay for the subscription. So I understand that. We'll talk about kind of influencers and what is out there. And so, what you get out is what has been put in by others in these AI models. A lot of times there is oversimplification and bold statements that are made that seem like they're specific, but are really general statements, again, for the whole CYA issue and not being wanting to be pinned down to. But we've all seen where it seems like that AI is giving us a very specific response to our question in a more granular level than it really is.
It's actually really funny, Jack, because there's been a lot of times where I've actually said in the prompt when I saw the response, I'm like, that's not right. So I go, are you sure? And then ChatGPT will say back to me, good catch. You're right. Upon further analysis.
Wow. I've never done that, but that is crazy.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't,
might
okay.
try that. Like when you get what you know is like, hey, that just doesn't seem right. Try that as a prompt and see what happens. Like I've had it on several occasions correct itself, and I'm not asking like super complicated stuff either.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Other examples, lawyers were fined for bogus AI citations, and this was a FIFA soccer case. California attorney fined for fake quotes in a brief. Fake precedent generated by ChatGPT, AI hallucination. In legal tools, we talk about the 17% to 33% that was tested. Businesses using AI to speak to customers. This one was interesting. Okay. So there was a business that used an AI chatbot acting as an agent, and it was found to have made legally binding statements and creating liability because they misstated contract terms, promises, and warranties. And so apparently the person relied upon this, and I think either purchased something or said, yes, come do the repair. And it was expensive, and then they got a bill for it. And it was, well, your AI, your chatbot said, yeah, we were covered. Or that the cost was covered. So was like, yeah, that's a problem. AI using other people's intellectual property, whether it's trademarks, copyrights, etc., and giving you copyrighted material and you put that in. We're seeing that at the college level, and the anti-chatbot efforts to make sure that when someone submits a paper or homework or exam responses, that is their thought and not something that has been generated by AI. My kids, both in college, have experienced, they lock down the computers. Like they have to use certain laptops and they lock them down so that you cannot go external into the internet, into the World Wide Web, and supplement. And then they also have programs that will check and see if that's the case. I believe I understand that recruiters. And so, for example, our law firm, BGW, maybe using this or use this in the future to see that when someone submits something to us, let's say it's like a writing sample or work product previously, run it through this filter to see if it's really theirs or if they ripped it off from somewhere. So, again, AI has its utility see unlawful social media policies for employees. So creating your social media policy or even an employee manual, and relying upon that and publishing that out there, and that being your rules of the road for your employees. Okay. We've talked about a lot of these other cases. Okay, Air Canada, incorrect information about a bereavement fare. Family gets on board. And then they charge them additional money after the fact. And the AI chatbot had provided them information regarding what that fare would be. I don't know the details of that. We talked about the FIFA case. There was a case in New York. It was called Do Not Pay. And it was a robot lawyer that was giving advice. The FTC actually got involved in that and had a problem with that. They were fined like almost $250,000 in a very short period of time for that. Morgan and Morgan, I don't know. Since we spend time down in Charleston, I see their signs and their commercials all the time, but they got in trouble because they used information that was an AI hallucination in one of their cases that they filed. Okay, so let's talk about momentarily use of AI in transactions and in your business. So I have, and it hasn't been in its entirety, meaning the entire set of documents that are used in a transaction. But I, as I said before, have been given documents that were AI generated that, how about we use this as the core for the asset purchase agreement or the stock purchase agreement? And, and I haven't experienced this, but I know some of my colleagues in another office in our corporate group have experienced this, which is, here's a document that was drafted by AI and it was signed. It was the main core transaction document. Money was exchanged, assets were acquired, and guess what? Problem arises. Well, let's see how to figure out how to deal with this based upon the document that was signed that was binding as between the parties. Missing all kinds of reps and warranties, missing indemnification provisions, missing all these things that normally a party would rely upon. Because understand that a contract, in a lot of ways, is the assignment of risk of certain things. Did you lie? Did you really have this issue? Are you having customer issues? Are you having employee issues? And so by the seller saying, no, we don't, then they're basically giving you a warranty that, and if you find out that we do, and we didn't tell you, there are consequences. And so all this is laid out in these documents. IP, trade secret misuse via social advice. So, a media post that said you can always rely on non-disclosure agreements to protect everything. Okay. That statement ignores a lot of things. I mean, there's so many things wrong with that statement. First of all, NDAs are jurisdiction-based, meaning state-based, state law-based. There has to be two main elements in an NDA, which is, well, several elements, but legitimate, protectable business interest by the restriction. It has to be geographically appropriate and not too broad, and the length of it has to be appropriate. All these factors go into whether or not a non-disclosure confidentiality agreement is enforceable in a particular jurisdiction. So, making a statement like that and relying upon that is, again, crazy.
Well, you would think the fact that it had two definitives in that statement, I mean, always and never, I think, or I don't, but they were like two definitives. That is a clue.
Always.
It goes against all legal advice that you give, which is it depends.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can always rely on NDAs to protect everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, always
right?
and everything.
Right. And so, yeah, you would think, but I get it. We're like, okay, wow, let me just throw this in there and see what it says. And like, oh, that sounds very well reasoned and sounding. So I'm going to rely upon that and then go on to the next task. So I get it. And what I'm really saying is it requires all of us to kind of slow down just for a moment and see, okay, but like many other things, we get addicted to it. And even in fact, like these examples, I didn't go spend 5 hours researching these examples. I used AI to aggregate these examples, and I asked it several different ways. I asked it from a legal perspective, and I asked it from a business owner perspective. And there was a lot of crossover, but there were some things that didn't show up because, again, I asked it a slightly different question, and it gave me a slightly different output. TikTok, YouTube, lawyers offering legal help without a license. So, more on the influencer side of things and actually the illegal practice of law. So, but I mean, that sounds right. This person is a victim. They may not even say that they are a lawyer, but they're giving legal advice. They may be dressed up, look like, they may look the part, but you just, again, be aware of your sources. Influencers, and I said that we would talk about that a little bit. So, again, people who seem to have an aura of authority and are out there and maybe have published many, you do a lot of something, then you appear to be an expert in that, whatever it is. And there are exceptions. Obviously, the three of us, we've been doing this for 5 years, but our level of expertise is like potentially questionable. People keep showing up, so I guess we're doing okay.
Hey, comment on this one from Joseph. He lost a business case because the NDA he signed was ruled to be ambiguous.
Yeah, and so Joe, what you're probably referring to is, that it has to be, and I mentioned this, legitimate business interest. And so what that means is, what is reasonably protectable? An example would be is if you were in the accounting department and you have a non-compete and you go work for a competitor, but it is in the marketing department, and it says that and you have clearly no financial responsibilities, then is it overreaching that they can't? And again, there's a lot that would have to go into that, which there would have to be a demonstrable wall between accounting and marketing in the new company to be able to say, yeah, I just don't have anything to do with that, I'm not taking any clients, this and that. But if the words are ambiguous, it says across the entire United States, and it's like a brick and mortar company that only has locations in North and South Carolina, and this person moves to California and has no relationship, did not take customers because it's not internet based, then it's going to be unenforceable. Then the next thing is, well, I've heard this interesting concept about a blue pencil. What that means is that can a court go in, and you probably have seen interestingly drafted non-competes as far as geography, which will say A, entire United States, B, southeastern United States, C, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, D, North and South Carolina, E, North Carolina, F, Mecklenburg County and surrounding counties, and then so on and so on. And the geography gets smaller and smaller, under the theory that the court can strike out A through D and leaves E through G, and then it's enforceable in that because they've now taken this and put it to this. Courts are reluctant to do that, and I've only seen it done in a very small number of cases and not in North and South Carolina predominantly. So those are the things that will invalidate a non-compete. Essentially.
Well, this was an NDA though, and so on an NDA, I mean, that could be tied to an employment agreement, right? A
It
non-disclosure.
could, yeah.
But
So
it
yeah,
could
sorry.
also be like, hey, I want to talk with you guys about this, but I don't want you to steal my idea before I get the patent or whatever, right? But I'd be really curious because we get requests to sign NDAs all day, every day. Well, I mean, pretty frequently, right? And
Yeah.
so how do you know if it's enforceable or not? And like every time, do you really need to call an attorney every time somebody sticks an NDA in front of you because you're gonna, yeah, we're not gonna talk to anybody else about your
Right.
super stuff,
Yeah, a lot of that, and sorry, I was focused on non-compete instead of NDA, but the key component to the NDA is the definition of confidential information. And that, okay, is it confidential information? Was it confidential information at the time? And so if you say anything that anybody ever says to you, is it enforceable? So I would say it's not so much that the contract is unenforceable. It is, have you violated the contract? And does the contract have reasonable terms and conditions? So the way I build the definition of confidential information is I'm very specific as to what it is, where the sources are, and I protect trade secrets, which is its own category, forever and ever, because it needs to be protected that way. So again, it comes down to, could I do a search and find the same information? So, or I wasn't the one who let the cat out of the bag, so you can't enforce it against me, because it isn't, again, focusing on the definition. So,
All right, that's good. Well, I know we're at 12:01 Eastern time.
yeah. And I think I've
So
sufficiently covered all of the examples and everything else, but I mean, the point is that just, AI is a fantastic tool, but it's not infallible, and it can create fallacies in us depending on how we use it and how much we rely upon it.
So bonus question answered for Papa Joe, because he's been on here for 5 years and we appreciate you, Joe. But he says, aren't there some general protections even without an NDA?
Yeah, so you have certain duties to your employer, and more so if you are an officer, director, or owner. It rises to the level of fiduciary duties to, keep things quiet, secret, not disclose, and those kind of things. But for the obviously the best protection, even and so that's why we talk about having employment agreements even for at-will employees, because those agreements have confidentiality, non-disclosure, non-solicitation of your co-employees, non-solicitation of so it's not a non-compete, it's a non-solicitation. You can go work for someone else, you just can't take our clients over to them.
Yeah, that's good. Well, how do we know if the questions that you asked ChatGPT are legit, or if those examples were just hallucinations? I'm just kidding. Never
You
know.
ask what Adam asked, which is, are you sure?
Yeah. Well, anybody that's prompted any AI knows that you have to really talk to it like a grad student and get very specific and then correct it. Like, that's the key. That really is the key. And we're still learning, that's for sure. But Jack, thanks for going deep into this subject. And Adam, thanks for doing that a couple weeks ago on the tax stuff. We'll probably want to come back to this at some point. Because it seems like the volume of content is exponentially increasing, just in our current world. We'll see what we do next week. I asked Ashley Tyson if he could join us either next week or sometime down the road to talk about some of the changes in opportunity zones and opportunities, not just changes, but opportunities in opportunity zones, because there were some ahas with one of our team members yesterday in our all hands talking about some of these things and some of the moves that business owners were making. They used actually an example of somebody had a $600,000 Corvette and they were able to, they sold this Corvette for 600 grand, and they were able to go into an OZ fund and timing of some of that stuff. Interesting stuff that, and Ashley Tyson is kind of the guru locally on that. So, stay tuned on that and we'll see. And then on the 9th, what are we going to just talk about, Jack, just to give a little teaser?
Yeah, so I have a friend who she's a teacher. She has I think more than one master's as well, in other stuff. But she started out with adolescents and younger kids and talking about ADD, ADHD, but then also has gone into and always had really, but the focus is now more broad, which is adults. So she does coaching, and it's executive functioning essentially, and higher functioning, and how our brain works and deals with things, and inputs and outputs. And so I've been after her for a while. She was very busy over the summer months dealing with her younger clients while they were on summer break and kind of thing. And so now has a little bit more time, although I think she's going on she's published books on all various issues. And so happy to have her on, and she was always happy to be on. It's just a matter of trying, working out schedules. So I believe we're going to do that on October 9th. So 2 weeks from now.
So cognitive functioning and increasing that cognitive functioning. Hey, well, I'm not going to join you because I have no room for any improvement.
Yeah, my
Just
hard
ask
drive is
Adam.
full. So, I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Looking forward to it. We'll definitely take notes. We'll put this up on BGW YouTube channel, and Shoemaker has theirs. It'll be up later on today. So thank you guys for joining us. Sure appreciate it. Oh yeah. Joseph, last call. I found it best to copy and paste text of the document into the AI to help fix correctable errors and obvious opinions versus legal verbiage. Thank you for that tip. It's always good to see you here too, Joseph. Joe and Joseph, we can kind of count on those guys. So you guys have a good day. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy fall in beautiful Charlotte. Take care.
Thank you guys.
See you guys. All right.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.